It was 2:30 on a lazy summer afternoon in our small Ohio town. The world had settled into that soft, drowsy stillness unique to Midwest summers, a quiet so profound you could pick out every subtle ambient sound. The low, steady hum of the central air conditioning vent breathed through the house, while outside, a gentle breeze rustled the broad leaves of the ancient oak tree standing tall in our front yard, creating a faint, soothing whisper that carried through the open floor-to-ceiling windows. My name is Eric, and I am 58 years old. I have lived my entire life by quiet, unwavering principles, never chasing thrills or courting trouble. After graduating from college, I spent 30 steady years working as a mechanical engineer at a local manufacturing firm, building a predictable, comfortable middle-class life. I never struck it rich, nor did I ever fall on hard times. My days were simple, stable, and unremarkable in the best way possible. I was never one for arguments, drama, or unnecessary chaos. 2 rules had guided every decision I'd ever made: stay calm in the face of crisis, and always let hard evidence speak for itself. On this quiet afternoon, I was settled deep into our beige fabric living room sofa, cradling our 4-month-old infant daughter in my arms. The soft gray short pile carpet beneath my feet was newly installed the previous year, chosen specifically for a baby-friendly home, plush and forgiving, designed to cushion every unsteady crawl and clumsy fall. Beyond the glass windows stretched a neatly manicured green lawn, its edges trimmed sharp and precise, lined with clusters of hydrangea bushes Linda had planted with her own hands the spring before. The 2-story, 3-bedroom, 2-bath family home was modest, purchased with a mortgage when I was 35. It was the quintessential small-town Ohio residence, unflashy, sturdy, and built for quiet, lasting domesticity. The tiny infant nestled against my chest was Lily, the little girl we'd presented to the world as our daughter. At 4 months old, she was as soft and delicate as a warm cloud of cotton fluff. She wore a pale pink onesie trimmed with fine, delicate lace at the cuffs and ankle hems, a discounted bargain find Linda had picked up from the local baby supply store just days prior. She'd just finished drinking 4 ounces of formula, her tiny head resting heavily against my chest, her small ear pressed snug to my cotton shirt, listening to the slow, steady thud of my heartbeat. Her miniature hands were clenched into tight, soft fists, her tiny fingernails pale pink and translucent, occasionally flexing to grasp weakly at the collar of my shirt in random, unconscious movements. I supported her small bottom steadily with one hand, my other palm patting gently and rhythmically against her back, every movement practiced, tender, and infinitely familiar. Over the past 4 months, Linda had constantly complained of exhaustion and frayed nerves, worn thin by the endless demands of newborn care. Nearly all the grueling, monotonous late-night work, overnight feedings, soothing fussy wake-ups, diaper changes, and calming gassy discomfort had fallen to me. I was no longer young. My body lacked the stamina of someone decades younger. The frequent midnight wake-ups left my lower back aching and my eyes dry and strained each morning, yet I never uttered a single word of complaint. The baby was so small, so pure and helpless, that a genuine, protective warmth bloomed naturally in my chest. I loved her wholeheartedly, or at least, I believed I did. For 12 years, I had dedicated myself entirely to my marriage with Linda. At 58, there was a 16-year age gap between us. She was 42, vibrant and sharp, while I was steady, grounded, and focused solely on preserving our family's peace. I had always prioritized our home, cherished my wife, and doted on our supposed daughter, convinced this quiet, stable domesticity was the greatest blessing of my later years. I'd thought Lily would be my sweetest comfort as I aged, the perfect capstone to a lifetime of honest, hard work. Linda had received an emergency work call that noon, summoning her to the office for an impromptu mandatory meeting. She'd scrambled frantically to change her clothes, grab her work tote, and rush out the door in her heels, so flustered and hurried that she'd left her cell phone sitting forgotten on our nightstand. Moments after she'd sped away, Lily had grown sleepy and fussy, and I'd settled onto the sofa to rock her gently to sleep. Golden afternoon sunlight streamed diagonally through the floor-to-ceiling windows, spilling over the baby's fine, downy infant hair, wrapping her in warm, soft light. Staring down at her peaceful, sleeping face, my heart felt full and grounded. I believed my life was simple, stable, and complete, a quiet, ordinary happiness I'd spent decades cultivating. It was in that perfect moment of calm that Linda's phone on the coffee table lit up abruptly. No notification was hidden, no preview blurred. A text message popped up front and center on the lock screen, bold and unmissable, burning itself straight into my line of sight. The sender's saved name, Mark Hansen. The message was only a single short sentence, yet it cut through my peaceful life like a thin shard of ice, sharp and unforgiving. Is our little girl being good today? Time froze entirely. The hum of the air conditioner faded into silence. The rustle of oak leaves outside vanished completely. The entire world fell into an eerie, unnatural stillness. My pupils contracted sharply, a cold, heavy stone settling over my chest, stalling my breath mid-inhalation. Yet I did not move an inch. My hands did not shake. I did not jolt upright in shock. I felt no surge of explosive, reckless anger. At 58, I had weathered decades of workplace pressure, human duplicity, and life's unforeseen crises. I long ago outgrew impulsive outbursts and emotional meltdowns. The more catastrophic the situation, the colder and more deliberate my composure became. Panic solved nothing. Chaos erased control. And I was not about to lose control now. I knew Mark Hansen far too well. At 45, he was Linda's direct supervisor, the department director at her corporate office. Polished, well-dressed, and socially prominent within our small local business circle, he carried himself with effortless authority and superficial charm. I had met him twice before at company team-building events and annual holiday galas I'd attended alongside Linda. Every interaction had been impeccably polite and cordial. He'd addressed me warmly as Brother Eric, maintaining a humble, respectful demeanor that never hinted at anything amiss. Every smile, every handshake, every friendly greeting had been a carefully crafted mask. This single text stripped away every last layer of his polished pretense. Our little girl. 4 words, each one a blade piercing through every truth I had believed for 4 months. Lily was Linda's daughter, conceived and carried to term over 10 months of pregnancy. The entire town, all our friends and family, every colleague and neighbor, believed she was my child, the biological fruit of our 12-year marriage. But this text laid bare the horrific secret hidden in plain sight. Another man considered this baby his daughter. Another man had claimed paternal rights over the child I'd raised as my own. I glanced down again at the sleeping infant in my arms, studying her features with new, brutal clarity. The shape of her eyes, the bridge of her nose, the gentle curve of her mouth. Not a single detail bore any resemblance to mine. In the months after her birth, I'd fleetingly noticed the lack of familiarity, but had always comforted myself with the thought that newborn features were undeveloped, that she would grow to look more like her parents as she aged. In that quiet, devastating moment, I understood the terrible truth. It was not that her features were unformed. There was simply no biological bond between us at all. I drew a slow, deep breath, my chest tight with a swirling storm of shock, cold heartbreak, and absurd, crippling disbelief. Yet my arms remained steady, my hold on Lily gentle and unwavering. I did nothing to disturb her peaceful sleep, refusing to punish an innocent child for the unforgivable sins of adults. I resisted the immediate urge to unlock the phone and scroll through their messages. Impulsiveness was fatal in situations this high stakes. One wrong move, one accidental tap, could compromise evidence, leave tampering traces, or allow the incriminating proof to be deleted or altered. I operated with calculated precision, prioritizing preservation over immediate gratification. First, I confirmed Lily was sound asleep. Her breathing was slow and even, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily, her long dark lashes resting softly against her cheeks, lost in deep, peaceful slumber. I stood slowly, shifting my weight with extreme caution to avoid jostling her, and stepped quietly to the baby monitor beside the sofa. I cranked the volume to its maximum setting and adjusted the camera angle to fully frame the crib, ensuring I would hear and see the slightest movement or sound from the baby the second it happened. With my safety net secured, I finally reached for Linda's phone. The screen remained illuminated, the damning text still displayed prominently on the lock screen. My fingers were perfectly steady, no tremor of anger or grief present, as I tapped the notification and opened the message thread. The second the chat history loaded, My heart turned completely cold in my chest. I scrolled upward, discovering a sprawling, continuous conversation spanning a full 18 months. The timeline stretched all the way back to when Linda and Mark had first begun planning for a pregnancy, continuing through every prenatal checkup, every ultrasound, the day of Lily's birth, her postpartum recovery, and every single day of newborn care that followed. They had communicated privately, constantly, obsessively, through every stage of Linda's pregnancy and early motherhood. Their messages were overtly intimate, emotionally dependent, and laced with romantic affection reserved exclusively for lovers. During Linda's first trimester, Mark had sent lengthy messages advising her on diet, rest, and prenatal care, warning her against late nights and stress. When the baby first kicked in the womb, Linda had immediately recorded a video and sent it to him, sharing the milestone not with her husband, but with her lover. On the day Lily was born, Mark had been more elated than I had been, spamming her phone with dozens of frantic, excited messages begging for updates on mother and child. Throughout her entire postpartum recovery period, they had chatted daily in secret, sharing every small detail of the baby's daily routine and growth. For 4 months, I had sacrificed sleep night after night, rising repeatedly to mix formula, change soiled diapers, clean spit-up-stained clothing, and soothe Lily's gassy, fussy fits with warm compresses and gentle rocking. I had poured endless love, effort, and devotion into raising this child, believing she was my flesh and blood. Now the truth was undeniable. Every ounce of my labor had been spent raising another man's illegitimate daughter. I was not a father. I was merely a gullible, loyal husband, a free caretaker, a fool duped into devoting his life to another couple's secret child. A tidal wave of bitter grievance and piercing irony crashed over me, yet my facial expression remained impassive, calm, and unyielding. There was no fiery rage, no broken sorrow, only the cold, crystalline clarity of full realization. I had never been an impulsive man, but I was especially deliberate when it came to matters that threatened my marriage, my financial security, and my lifelong reputation. I had always known Linda harbored vanities and selfish tendencies, flaws I had spent 12 years overlooking and forgiving in the name of household peace. I believed my patience and generosity would cultivate stability and loyalty in return. Instead, I had been rewarded with 18 months of unrelenting lies and cold, calculated betrayal. I did not delete a single message. I did not type a single reply. I did not interact with the chat interface in any way, terrified of leaving digital traces that Mark or Linda could later twist to accuse me of tampering with evidence. Every incriminating word remained exactly as it was, unaltered and authentic. I pulled out my own personal phone, activated its highest resolution screenshot function, and began systematically capturing every page of their chat history. Starting from their very first conversation 18 months prior, I saved each screen one by one, ensuring every timestamp, profile picture, contact name, and intimate message was fully preserved with zero cropping, zero omissions, zero errors. I captured more than 40 full pages of explicit, damning correspondence, archiving every last incriminating exchange. Once the screenshots were complete, I immediately implemented a rigorous triple backup system to guarantee irreversible evidence preservation. I saved the full resolution images to my phone's local storage, uploaded every file to my encrypted cloud drive, and forwarded the complete folder to my private backup email account. No amount of deletion, device resetting, or tampering could erase or corrupt this ironclad proof. Even after securing my case, my emotions remained perfectly stabilized. I gently powered off Linda's phone and placed it back on the coffee table in the exact same position and angle I'd found it, erasing all traces of my interaction. No one, not even Linda, would be able to tell I had uncovered her years-long deception. I returned to the crib and stood gazing down at the sleeping Lily once more. I had always known the child was innocent. No matter how vile and deceitful the adults in her life were, this 4-month-old baby knew nothing of affairs, lies, or betrayal. Her purity and innocence were unblemished, undeserving of punishment for her parents' sins. Softly, I reached down and adjusted her thin cotton blanket, tucking it securely around her tiny bare feet to keep her warm. Yet in that quiet moment, the heavy, paternal affection I'd carried in my heart for months vanished entirely. In its place came a cold, empty clarity and unshakable resolve. This home, this marriage, was rotten to its core. I would not scream, not fight, not break down hysterically. I would not act out in reckless anger. At 58, I understood the most powerful revenge was quiet, dignified, and absolute. I would not destroy lives. I would simply reclaim my own. Every lie I had endured, every humiliation I had silently borne, every betrayal I had overlooked would be repaid in full through legal, fair, and unassailable means. I had just settled Lily securely in her crib, ensuring she slept soundly and undisturbed, when the front doorbell rang sharply through the quiet house. Ding-dong. The chime was jarringly loud in the muted afternoon stillness, cutting through the soft hum of the home's quiet atmosphere. I frowned slightly and glanced up at the wall clock, reading 2:50 p.m. This was not a typical hour for casual neighborly visits. The daily mail and package deliveries had already concluded earlier that morning, and Linda had only just left for the office minutes prior. She could not possibly have returned so quickly. I walked slowly toward the front foyer, exercising deliberate caution. Instead of unlocking and swinging open the door immediately, I leaned forward to check the video doorbell screen mounted beside the entrance. A man stood on my front porch, dressed in a crisp, tailored dark business suit that bespoke his corporate status. In one hand, he clutched a small paper baby gift bag, his face stretched into a warm, seemingly honest and polite smile that never reached his eyes. Mark Hansen, Linda's direct supervisor, the man who had sent that damning text minutes earlier, asking after our little girl. He had audacity beyond measure to show up unannounced at my front door. In an instant, I pieced together the full sequence of events. Linda had rushed out for her emergency meeting in such a frantic hurry that she'd forgotten her phone, leaving her unable to reply to his text message. Growing anxious and impatient without a response, entirely confident that I remained completely oblivious to their year-and-a-half-long affair, he had grown bold enough to invade my home. Under the thin, transparent pretense of checking on his employee's newborn baby, he had come to see his own illegitimate child. His arrogance was staggering. He had taken my quiet nature, my loyalty, my calm, easygoing temperament for weakness. He assumed I was a docile, ignorant husband, easy to deceive, easy to walk all over, easy to mock behind my back while reaping the rewards of my stable home and hard work. I drew a slow, steady breath, suppressing every flicker of rage and disgust churning in my chest. I smoothed my expression back to its usual gentle, neutral calm, erasing all trace of a storm raging beneath the surface. No anger showed on my face, no hostility lingered in my posture. I pressed the door release button and pulled open the front door. The moment the door opened, Mark slipped into a flawless professional grin, warm, affable, and perfectly rehearsed. He adopted the exact demeanor of a concerned senior colleague checking in on a subordinate's family, his tone friendly and approachable. "Good afternoon, Eric. I stopped by the office looking for Linda, and a coworker mentioned she'd rushed home to handle some personal business. I figured the little one's still so young, so I thought I'd drop by and visit. It's just a small token for the baby, nothing fancy. Please don't hesitate." As he spoke, he extended the gift bag toward me. Inside, I caught sight of imported premium baby lotion, a medical-grade soothing pacifier, and a high-end organic baby powder formulated specifically for newborns and young infants. Every item was precisely tailored to the needs of a 4-month-old baby, selected with a level of intimate knowledge no ordinary supervisor could possibly possess. This was not generic workplace courtesy. This was the meticulous, attentive care of a biological father checking on his child. I stood firmly in the doorway, making no move to accept his gift. I simply held his gaze, my eyes calm and unblinking, sharp with the quiet certainty of someone who knew every hidden truth. My stare was not aggressive or confrontational, but it cut straight through every layer of his polished performance. Mark's smile never faltered, his composure remaining seemingly perfect as he feigned casual familiarity. "What's wrong, Eric? You look surprised." "I just wanted to see the baby. Linda's been pulling so much overtime lately, juggling her heavy workload and a newborn at home. She's had it incredibly tough these past few months." I spoke at last, my voice low, steady and completely devoid of emotion. "You don't need to pretend anymore, Mark." His polished smile froze instantly on his face. A split second of raw, panicked alarm flashed in his eyes before he forced it away, scrambling to resurrect his confused, innocent act. I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean, Eric. Did I catch you at a bad time? I didn't mean to intrude. He clung desperately to his respectable corporate persona, refusing to surrender his facade of polite professionalism, unwilling to admit the truth laid bare before him. I stepped forward half a pace, standing in the soft glow of the entryway natural light, my posture relaxed yet unyielding. I did not shout, did not accuse, did not lose my temper. I simply dismantled every last one of his lies with slow, deliberate, unshakable clarity. I saw the text you sent Linda a little while ago. You asked if our little girl was being good today. Those two quiet sentences landed like thunder in the quiet afternoon air, shattering every trace of his false composure. Mark's face drained of all color in an instant. Every ounce of his warm professionalism, his easy charm, his confident poise vanished without a trace. His pupils constricted sharply, his smile collapsing completely into a gawking, guilty slackness. Embarrassment, panic, and the terror of being exposed washed over his features in waves. He stumbled backward half a step on the porch, the gift bag trembling slightly in his grip. His previously steady tone turned tight, flustered and unconvincing. Eric, you've misunderstood completely. It was just a careless typo, a stupid offhand joke. It didn't mean anything at all. A typo. I repeated the word flatly, my tone cold and unyielding. Was every message across 18 months also a typo? Updating her on your daily life throughout her entire pregnancy, checking in on every prenatal appointment, celebrating every fetal milestone, comforting her through late-night postpartum exhaustion. Were all of those just meaningless jokes too? Mark fell utterly silent. His lips parted uselessly, but no denial, no excuse, no rebuttal escaped him. He was completely tongue-tied, trapped by the irrefutable truth. He had never once considered that I, his quiet, docile, unsuspecting subordinate's husband, had uncovered every last secret. In his arrogant mind, I was the last person who would ever discover their affair, a slow, gullible fool content to live in ignorance while he stole my wife and raised my supposed child. I did not stoop to mocking him, did not hurl insults, did not crowd him aggressively. I maintained the full dignity of a wronged man in complete control of his situation. Mark, I have always lived my life by rules and integrity. I held his panicked, evasive gaze firmly, speaking slowly and deliberately. As Linda's supervisor, you have every right to support and guide her professionally. But you had no right to invade another man's home, no right to seduce another man's wife, no right to claim another man's child as your own. You know exactly who Lily's biological father is. And now I know too. My refusal to create a scene today is not weakness. I simply refuse to fill my home with conflict and humiliation, not in front of a sleeping, innocent baby. My voice remained soft, yet carried unshakable authority, every word firm and resolute. Mark's face flushed bright red before bleaching pale again, alternating between burning shame and cold dread. A lifelong executive accustomed to universal respect and social deference, he had never looked so unraveled, so pathetic, so utterly defeated. He hung his head, his eyes darting away from mine, unable to hold my steady stare for even a second. After several long, torturous seconds of silence, he forced out a hoarse, desperate apology. Eric, this was my fault. I was foolish, reckless, and completely in the wrong. But I swear to you, I never intended to hurt you or destroy your family. What's done is done. I can offer you full compensation, name any terms, and we can settle this peacefully, without any further trouble. A cold, bitter scorn settled in my chest. Even in his moment of ruin, he felt no genuine remorse. He did not apologize for betraying trust, for destroying a marriage, for deceiving an innocent family. He only sought to buy his way out of accountability with money, convinced all mistakes could be erased with compensation. He assumed I was the typical aging, quiet husband terrified of public shame, terrified of familial collapse, terrified of social scrutiny. He thought I would swallow my dignity, accept his payout, and continue raising his daughter to preserve a false facade of domestic perfection. He had gravely misjudged my character. I could tolerate poverty, hardship, and the mundane struggles of ordinary life. But I could never tolerate deliberate betrayal, calculated deception, or being used as a foolish pawn in other people's selfish games. I looked at him indifferently, my tone unwavering. I want no compensation. Adults bear the full consequences of their own choices. Money cannot erase moral wrongdoing. Leave my house now. Do not return. Do not contact Linda again. Never disturb my life, or my child's life for any reason. My tone was gentle yet uncompromising, leaving zero room for negotiation or leniency. Mark froze in place, overwhelmed by helpless shame and dawning terror. He finally understood that my calmness was not cowardice. It was the quiet confidence of a man who held all the cards, who had already secured every piece of evidence needed to destroy him. He dared not linger a single second longer. Clutching his unwanted gift bag tightly, he nodded awkwardly, mumbled another quiet, useless apology, and stumbled clumsily down my front porch steps. He hurried to his sedan, jumped inside, and sped away from the neighborhood in a rush. I stood in the doorway and watched his vehicle disappear down the street before I slowly closed and locked the front door. The house fell back into its original quiet, the only sound the soft, steady breathing of the sleeping baby in the next room. I stood motionless in the foyer for a long moment, my mind perfectly clear, my emotions entirely stabilized. The farce was finally nearing its end. I held every piece of the puzzle, every thread of evidence, every advantage. All that remained was for Linda to return home and face the complete, unsparing collapse of every lie she had woven. Just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the familiar, rhythmic click of high heels on the concrete front walk echoed toward the house. Linda was home. I remained seated calmly on the living room sofa, my posture relaxed and unhurried. I held an old home decorating magazine loosely in my hands, appearing to browse idly with the casual ease of a man enjoying a quiet weekday afternoon. In truth, every nerve in my body was alert and focused, my mind sharp and unclouded, waiting patiently for her arrival. I wore no stern expression, no cold scowl, no tense body language, signaling confrontation. I looked exactly like the mild, devoted, family-focused husband she knew. In this critical moment, revealing my hand early would only give her time to formulate elaborate new lies. I would let her walk straight into her own contradictions, let her expose her own deceit, let her tear down every last one of her false facades with her own words. The front door swung open. Linda stepped inside, her work tote slung over one shoulder, and hung her bag automatically on the entryway coat rack. She kicked off her heels with a tired sigh, complaining habitually as she always did after a long workday, her voice thick with genuine exhaustion and frayed irritation. "I'm absolutely drained today. The company called a last-minute emergency meeting out of nowhere, dumping piles of tedious, stressful work on everyone. I've had the worst headache all afternoon. Thank God I have you here holding down the fort with the baby. I honestly don't know how I'd keep up with everything without you." She massaged her stiff shoulders, walked into the living room, and glanced over at the crib. Spotting Lily sleeping soundly and peacefully, she manufactured a faint, performative look of tender affection before turning her gaze to me, her tone shifting into deliberate, forced warmth and intimacy. "Was our baby good today? Did she fuss or cry at all? Did she take her formula well? Any gassiness or tummy trouble?" She rattled off a string of routine childcare questions, the phrases practiced, smooth, and completely natural after months of repetition. It was the script of a devoted mother, spoken flawlessly by a woman playing a role. I lifted my eyes to meet hers, answering flatly and neutrally. She was perfect all day. Slept well, ate well, barely made a peep. Linda exhaled a relieved breath, straightening her rumpled work blouse. A moment later, her brow furrowed in sudden confusion. She patted her pants pockets blindly, then rummaged hastily through her tote bag, a perplexed look crossing her face. "Where's my phone? I rushed out the door so fast this morning, I must have left it sitting here at home." I nodded toward the coffee table. "It's right there." She hurried over to grab her phone, tapping the screen to wake it up. The second the display lit, her eyes instinctively darted to the message preview bar at the top of the screen. In that split second, I watched her body stiffen almost imperceptibly. Her gaze flickered rapidly, her pupils darting back and forth in panic. Her fingertips tensed sharply against the phone's casing, her grip tightening instinctively. She recovered in the blink of an eye, masking her reaction with trained precision, but I had been watching every micro-movement, every subtle shift in her demeanor, and I saw every trace of her panic clearly. She had seen Mark's text. She knew instantly that I had almost certainly seen it too. Yet she did not confess. She did not break down. She did not offer a single honest explanation. She clung desperately to her last shreds of denial, determined to continue her charade rather than face the truth. She quickly exited the message app, locked her phone screen, and turned back to me with a bright, unwavering smile, her tone unnaturally casual and relaxed. Thank goodness I left it here. I would have missed so many important work updates today. By the way, Director Mark checked in on my project progress this afternoon. The whole team's swamped with overtime right now. He's buried in work too. She brought up Mark voluntarily, deliberately framing their interaction as strictly professional, using mundane workplace context to cover up their sordid secret relationship. It was a transparent, pathetic attempt to obscure the truth with normalcy. Watching her flawless practice performance, I felt no explosive anger, only a quiet, profound sorrow and biting irony. For 12 years, I had shared every waking day and quiet night with this woman. I had loved her faithfully, supported her endlessly, dedicated my home, my effort, and my loyalty entirely to our marriage. Meanwhile, for 18 months, she had lied to me relentlessly, betrayed my trust completely, cheated with her superior, and secretly borne his child, letting me bear every burden of domestic life while she indulged in her selfish affair. I spoke calmly, my voice soft but deliberate, landing the first blow without fanfare. He stopped by the house this afternoon. Linda's smile froze solid on her face. Her eyes widened in immediate, undisguised terror, her voice rising involuntarily with shock. Who? Mark? Why on earth would he come here? Her panic was raw, unscripted, and undeniable. Every layer of her carefully maintained composure cracked open in an instant. He said he was passing by and wanted to check on the baby. I delivered the words slowly, evenly, without inflection. But the first thing he said when he walked through the door had nothing to do with work. He didn't ask when you'd be back at the office. He only asked if our little girl had been good today. The moment the sentence finished, the entire living room fell into a suffocating, dead silence. Linda froze completely in place, every drop of color draining from her face until she was deathly pale. She stood rigid beside the coffee table, her fingers trembling visibly around her phone, her eyes darting wildly around the room, unable to meet my gaze. All her confidence, all her acting skill, all her composure shattered completely. She opened her mouth, her throat bobbing repeatedly, struggling to formulate an explanation, but no excuse came. There was no way to spin those words, no way to rationalize that intimate, paternal question. I did not interrupt her silence. I did not berate her, did not badger her with accusations. I simply watched her quietly, granting her one final shred of dignity, one last voluntary chance to confess the truth on her own. 30 full seconds of heavy, oppressive silence ticked by. Finally, Linda's fragile psychological defense crumbled entirely. Her eyes flooded with red, tears welling instantly as she adopted her signature victim act, choking out manufactured sobs of grievance and hurt. Eric, please listen to me. It's not what you think. I swear it's not. That text was just him being inappropriate and messing around. He's the one harassing me unilaterally. I never responded, never encouraged him. There's absolutely nothing between us, I promise you. He's been pestering me nonstop using his authority as my boss. I've had to endure it because I can't afford to upset him and risk losing my job. I was scared of financial pressure on our family, scared of letting you down. I never betrayed you. Please believe me. She cried openly, her face streaked with tears, painting herself as a helpless, persecuted employee suffering relentless workplace harassment, shifting every ounce of blame entirely onto Mark. It was her oldest, most reliable tactic: feign vulnerability and victimhood to evoke my sympathy, manipulate my kindness, and absolve herself of all responsibility. In years past, I would have fallen for it. I would have pitied her stress, comforted her for her workplace struggles, and forgiven her perceived misfortune. I was always soft-hearted toward her suffering. But not anymore. I held irrefutable proof of every lie, every betrayal, every deliberate choice she had made. I knew the full, unvarnished truth. I watched her fake tears and exaggerated despair with perfect mental clarity, my heart completely unmoved, no flicker of mercy or compassion remaining. Save the performance, Linda. My tone remained steady, flat, and entirely emotionless. That single text is the least of your lies. I've read every message you two exchanged over the past 18 months. Every conversation from the moment you started planning your pregnancy, through every prenatal checkup, your delivery, your postpartum recovery, and every day of Lily's infancy. I've seen every intimate, ambiguous, private message between you. I've screenshot and backed up every single one. You confided your deepest frustrations to him late at night. You updated him constantly on every detail of your pregnancy. You sent him endless photos and videos of your growing baby. You exchanged affectionate, longing messages for months on end. This was never workplace harassment. This was mutual, willing, ongoing betrayal. With every sentence I spoke, Linda's face paled further, her body growing increasingly unsteady. By the time I finished speaking, she could barely stand upright. Her body swayed weakly, her tears drying abruptly on her cheeks, leaving only pure, hollow despair and terror in her eyes. She knew every lie had been exposed. Every pretense was shattered. There was no room left for denial, no possibility of twisting the truth. Yet she still refused to surrender. She abandoned her victim act entirely, dropping to her knees in desperate supplication, scrambling forward to reach for my hands, her tone humble, frantic, and pleading. "Eric, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was foolish. I was completely blinded. I messed up horribly, and I've hurt you so badly. But I still want to fix our family. I don't want a divorce. I don't want us to break apart. Lily's still so tiny. She can't grow up without a stable family. Please forgive me, just this once. I'll never contact him again, I swear it. I'll quit my job tomorrow, leave this industry entirely, stay home full-time to take care of you and the baby. We can go back to our normal, happy life." She sobbed violently, groveling in complete humiliation, attempting to use the baby, our years of marriage, and my lingering affection to manipulate my forgiveness. I lifted my hands gently, stepping back to avoid her grasp. I did not shove her away harshly, only moved aside softly, preserving the last trace of basic dignity between us. "It's too late." My voice was quiet, yet unshakably firm, carrying final, irreversible resolve. The unforgivable sin in marriage is not a single moment of weakness. It is prolonged deception, deliberate concealment, and systematically treating your spouse like a fool. For 18 months, you enjoyed every benefit of my devotion, my hard work, and the stable home I built for you, all while you carried another man's child and conducted a secret affair behind my back. You let me exhaust myself raising your baby, maintain our home, and shoulder every hardship alone, while you loved and communicated with your lover. You felt no guilt, no remorse, no hesitation. Every choice you made was entirely voluntary. I can endure poverty, hardship, and the mundane struggles of everyday life. But I cannot endure betrayal, and I will not spend my life as a deceived fool. Linda collapsed fully onto the floor, breaking down into uncontrollable, hysterical sobs, her shoulders shaking violently as she repeated endless, desperate apologies and pleas for mercy. But my mind was irrevocably made up. No amount of crying or begging would change my decision. I looked down at her calmly, laying out my future plans with absolute clarity, leaving no room for ambiguity. We will be separated starting today. I have compiled full, irrefutable evidence of your infidelity. I will not create a public scene or act out in anger. Every step moving forward will be handled formally, legally, and respectfully through my attorney. We will settle the question of a child's paternity through scientific testing, no speculation, no petty arguing. Linda lifted her tear-streaked face abruptly, her eyes wide with raw terror. What are you going to do?" I answered plainly, every word crisp and definitive. "I am scheduling a formal court-admissible paternity test. Once the results are finalized, all legal responsibilities, property divisions, and relational ties will be settled strictly by law, completely and transparently. In the days following that confrontation, I settled into a state of absolute, unwavering calm and rationality. My daily routine remained completely undisrupted, every aspect of my life proceeding steadily and methodically. I did not flee the house, did not engage in Cold War silence, did not neglect the baby out of resentment, and never spoke a word of our family's private scandal to any outsider. I continued tending faithfully to Lily's every daily need, changing her diapers, mixing her formula, soothing her to sleep, and preparing her early-stage baby food exactly as I had before. I completed every household chore without omission or complaint, maintaining our home's normal, orderly appearance. To every neighbor, friend, and acquaintance, our family appeared as stable, harmonious, and ordinary as always. No one could detect the catastrophic fractures hidden beneath our perfect domestic facade. No one knew our peaceful home was little more than a hollow shell, ruined beyond repair by lies and betrayal. Linda, by contrast, unraveled into constant, crippling anxiety. She lived in perpetual fear and panic, trapped by the consequences of her own actions. She dared not contact Mark again, terrified of further incriminating herself. She could not bring herself to return to work, paralyzed by dread of impending exposure. At home, she moved with exaggerated caution, walking on eggshells with every action, constantly monitoring my mood and demeanor. All her previous complaints, petty grievances, and entitled attitude vanished completely. She voluntarily took on the majority of household chores and dedicated excessive effort to caring for Lily, desperate to atone for her mistakes and win back my forgiveness. She clung stubbornly to a final thread of irrational hope, believing that if she behaved humbly enough, served me diligently enough, and showed sufficient remorse, I might soften my stance. She convinced herself I would choose to overlook her betrayal for the baby's sake, preserving our family's intact structure. On quiet nights, she would whisper tearful pleas beside me, repeating endless promises of perfect future behavior, swearing she would never repeat her mistakes, begging me repeatedly not to end our marriage. I never responded. I never wavered. I never felt the slightest temptation to compromise. Soft-hearted mercy was useless in the face of 18 months of calculated, ongoing deception. If I yielded now, I would condemn myself to a lifetime of humiliation, raising another man's child, living trapped in a marriage built entirely on lies. At 58, my remaining years were too few, too precious, to waste on self-sacrifice for someone else's sins. I would not wrong myself for a single day longer. Early on the third morning after our confrontation, I booked an official appointment with a state-recognized judicial appraisal center specializing in legal paternity testing. This facility was fully accredited for court evidence submission, its procedures rigorously regulated, its results legally binding and completely tamper-proof. No internal bias, no external manipulation, no fraudulent alteration could affect its final verdict. As soon as my appointment was confirmed, I informed Linda calmly and directly. Tomorrow morning, we are taking Lily for a formal paternity test. Linda's face blanched instantly, her hands clamping tightly around the hem of her shirt, her body shaking uncontrollably with terror. She understood perfectly well that the single official document would serve as the final, irreversible death sentence for our marriage. She launched into her final desperate plea, her eyes red and swollen with fresh tears. "Eric, please don't do this. I know I've messed up more than I can ever fix. But no matter who the baby's father is, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life devoted only to you. I'll love you, care for our home, and raise Lily with you faithfully. Why do you have to be so final, so unforgiving?" I held her tearful gaze steady, my tone calm yet unyielding. "I am not the one being cruel. You and Mark made this choice when you chose to betray every vow and destroy every trust. I need legal clarity, official innocence, and a complete separation of responsibility. I will not spend the rest of my life shouldering the consequences of your adultery. I will not let your selfish mistakes ruin the peace of my remaining years." The following morning, I drove Linda and Lily to the appraisal center right on schedule. The entire process was formal, sterile, methodical, and strictly confidential yet fully transparent. Professional medical staff collected oral swab samples from both Lily and me, verified our legal identities, cross-checked all personal documentation, and logged every detail into the official system. There was zero opportunity for private manipulation, error, or tampering. The 7-day waiting period for results was the most oppressive week of Linda's life. Plagued by relentless anxiety, she could not sit still, could not sleep soundly, could not find a moment of peace. She cried alone through countless sleepless nights, growing visibly gaunt and haggard with each passing day. I knew she occasionally snuck into her room to message Mark, scrambling to coordinate desperate damage control and seek empty reassurance from her lover. I chose to ignore every attempt at contact. I did not need to intercept their messages or investigate their schemes. My evidence chain was already ironclad. Every last-ditch effort they made was futile, nothing more than pointless scrambling against inevitable ruin. I did not waste the waiting week. I advanced every legal preparation methodically and efficiently. I organized, sorted, and securely archived every chat screenshot, every cloud backup file, every timestamped record of Mark's home visit, and every piece of evidence documenting Linda's prolonged deception. Simultaneously, I contacted the most reputable senior family law attorney in the county, a specialist with decades of experience handling high-conflict marital dispute cases. I laid out the full timeline of events in meticulous detail and submitted my complete preliminary evidence package. After reviewing my full body of proof, my attorney delivered a clear, definitive assessment. My evidence chain was complete, authentic, legally valid, and unbreakable. Linda's infidelity, prolonged deception, and deliberate concealment of an illegitimate child constituted absolute, unarguable marital fault under Ohio state law. I was legally entitled to claim nearly all marital joint property and bore zero legal obligation for Lily's present or future care. 1 week later, the official judicial paternity report was formally released. The thick printed document was authoritative and unadorned, stamped with the bright red official seal of the State Judicial Appraisal Board. Every data comparison, every genetic analysis, every technical conclusion was precise, objective, and irrefutable, leaving no room for interpretation or denial. The final verdict was printed in bold, unambiguous black text on the official conclusion page. Biological paternal relationship between Eric and Lily is scientifically excluded. Those few words shattered every last trace of false affection, every lingering flicker of misplaced paternal attachment, every final thread of hesitation in my heart. The last illusion of my flawed marriage crumbled completely away. I sat alone in my car holding the official report for several quiet minutes, processing the final truth. I felt no explosive rage, no crushing heartbreak, no desperate breakdown. What washed over me instead was a profound, weightless sense of absolute relief. I was finally free. No more self-deception, no more desperate hope for a broken marriage, no more carrying the burden of other people's selfish sins. Every late-night sacrifice, every tender gesture, every ounce of love and devotion I had poured into my family over 4 months had been gifted to a child with no biological connection to me, wasted entirely on a marriage built from start to finish on lies and betrayal. I returned home and placed the official report gently on the living room coffee table. The second Linda's eyes fell on the sealed judicial cover. Her legs buckled completely. She collapsed weakly onto the sofa, her gaze hollow and empty, all strength for resistance evaporating entirely. She did not need to open the document to know the definitive result. Every last bit of hope was extinguished in an instant. I spoke to her calmly, my tone final and unnegotiable. All evidence is now finalized and confirmed. From this point forward, my attorney will handle all proceedings. We will move forward with formal, legal divorce processes. I have never subscribed to crude tantrums, violent retaliation, or chaotic public confrontations. The most powerful form of revenge is always lawful, dignified, precise, and thorough. It is a decisive, irreversible reckoning that compels those who have wronged you to bear the lifelong consequences of their own selfish choices, with no loopholes for escape. For 18 long months, I had lived trapped in their elaborate web of deceit. For 4 months after Lily's birth, I endured the quiet, biting humiliation of being a substitute father, pouring all my energy, tenderness, and sleepless nights into raising a child who was never mine. I shouldered every tedious household chore and grueling childcare burden to sustain a perfect, peaceful family facade, oblivious to the cold, calculated betrayal unfolding right beneath my roof. I had trusted wholeheartedly, loved unconditionally, and dedicated my later years to a marriage and a child that were nothing but a well-crafted lie. Now, the official paternity test results had laid bare the unvarnished truth, erasing every last pretense and false hope. I would not sink to petty quarrels, hysterical outbursts, or spiteful retaliation. As a man who has always abided by rules and reason, I chose the calmest yet most decisive resolution: to let the law judge their sins and let reality deliver its due punishment. Linda and Mark's affair was never a momentary lapse of judgment, but a long-term, deliberate scheme. They had selfishly indulged their forbidden love, deceived and exploited an innocent man, and used my stable home and diligent efforts as a shield for their immoral affair. Every choice they made was voluntary, every consequence they faced was well-deserved. With all irrefutable evidence in hand, my attorney officially filed for divorce in Ohio Family Court. The case was airtight, complete chat records spanning 18 months, proof of Mark's unauthorized home visit, witness details of their intimate interactions, and the authoritative judicial paternity test report. The full chain of evidence was authentic, legally valid, and utterly unbreakable. In accordance with state law, Linda bore full marital fault for adultery and deliberate concealment of an illegitimate child. I was granted full exemption from all legal obligations for Lily's upbringing, custody, and future support. All marital property divisions were ruled in my favor. The house I had worked for decades to buy, the savings I had accumulated through years of diligence, and all shared family assets were legally returned to me. Linda left the marriage with nothing but her personal belongings, stripped of every benefit she had once enjoyed through my hard work and devotion. The fallout extended far beyond the dissolution of our marriage. My attorney formally submitted all evidence of Mark and Linda's prolonged improper relationship to Mark's company senior management and human resources department. As a high-ranking corporate supervisor, Mark was bound by strict professional ethics and workplace conduct policies. His long-term extramarital affair with a subordinate and his abuse of his position to facilitate personal and moral conduct constituted a serious violation of company regulations. The company launched an immediate internal investigation upon receiving the evidence. The facts were clear and indisputable, leaving no room for defense or mitigation. Within a week, Mark was officially dismissed from his position on disciplinary grounds, his corporate reputation and decades of professional career ruined overnight. News of a scandal spread quietly within the local business circle, tarnishing his personal credibility completely. No enterprise in the local industry was willing to hire a manager with such severe ethical blemishes, leaving his once promising career in total collapse. Linda's fate was no better. After the divorce ruling was finalized, her workplace was made aware of the full truth of her affair and marital fraud. Plagued by endless whispers and judgment from colleagues, she could no longer hold her head up at work. Tormented by overwhelming shame and pressure, she was forced to resign from her job voluntarily. Overnight, she lost her stable career, her comfortable middle-class life, and the secure home she had taken for granted. For a time, she clung to Mark, hoping that the two of them, bound by their shared secret child, could build a new life together to make up for everything they had lost. But ruin exposes human selfishness most vividly. Stripped of his high position and stable income, plagued by career failure and public disgrace, Mark no longer treated Linda with the former tenderness and indulgence. He blamed her entirely for the collapse of his career, resenting her for dragging him into irreversible ruin. Their secret romantic bond, built on lies and immorality, shattered instantly in the face of real hardship. They began to quarrel constantly, blaming each other for their misfortunes. The affection they had shared for 18 months faded into endless resentment, accusation, and conflict. The two people, who had once conspired to deceive me, were now trapped in mutual hatred and regret, suffering the bitter consequences of their own betrayal. While Linda and Mark were mired in endless strife and self-inflicted suffering, I walked away from the rotten marriage completely, regaining the peace and freedom I had long deserved. I did not harbor hatred, nor did I wallow in grief. After the dust settled, all that remained in my heart was thorough relief. I had wasted 12 years of my life on a deceitful marriage and 4 months of sleepless labor on a child who was never mine. But the law had returned my fairness, reality had corrected my wrongs, and I had completely cut off all ties with that false, illusory family. I retained the quiet, comfortable home I had built through decades of hard work. The familiar oak tree in the front yard, the neatly trimmed lawn, and the warm layout of the house were no longer tainted by lies and betrayal. I cleaned out all traces of Linda and Lily from the house, removing every piece of baby clothing, every maternal souvenir, and every trace of the false life I had once lived. The space returned to its original simplicity and tranquility, belonging solely to me. I resumed my regular, peaceful life. I went to work on time every day, focused on my engineering work with steady concentration, and returned to a quiet, undisturbed home every evening. No more late-night childcare toils. No more endless compromise for an ungrateful spouse. No more self-deception clinging to a broken family. Every day was calm, free, and unburdened. Occasionally, I would catch wind of news about Linda and Mark. After countless vicious quarrels and irreconcilable rifts, the two finally parted ways completely. Mark, disgraced and unemployable in the local industry, was forced to leave the town he had once dominated, drifting to an unfamiliar city with no career, no reputation, and no stable life. He spent every day trapped in regret, paying the price for his momentary desire and long-term hypocrisy. Linda was left alone to raise Lily by herself, burdened with single motherhood and endless life pressure. Without a stable job, without financial support, and without the comfortable life she once enjoyed, she struggled desperately to make ends meet. The trivial hardships of life that she had never endured before overwhelmed her completely. The delicate, pampered woman who once lived in comfort and vanity was worn down by poverty and trivial life chores, her former radiance fading completely. Most ironically of all, she finally experienced all the sleepless nights, exhausting childcare labor, and relentless life pressure that I had endured silently for 4 months. Yet this time, there was no one behind her to bear the burden for her, no loyal husband to clean up her messes, no one to tolerate her selfishness and complaints. Every hardship she faced was the inevitable outcome of her own choices. Sometimes, she would pass by my neighborhood occasionally, catching sight of me living a stable, peaceful, and relaxed life. She would stand far away in a daze, her eyes filled with regret and loss. She once had a perfect home, a loyal and devoted husband, and a stable life, but she abandoned everything for an illusory forbidden love, trading a lifetime of peace for fleeting passion. I never looked back, never felt pity, and never wavered in my resolution. I have always believed that the best revenge is not destroying others, but living a better life for yourself. I am 58 years old. I have seen through the falseness of human nature and the fragility of immoral relationships. I no longer crave illusory family warmth or blind affection. What I have now is the most precious thing in life: untainted peace, complete freedom, and full control over my own life. The quiet liquidation of all betrayal is finally complete. All lies have been uncovered, all sins have been punished, and all debts have been settled thoroughly. The dusty chapter of my failed marriage is permanently closed. Moving forward, there are only calm days, unburdened years, and a brand new life belonging solely to me.